This is the new third generation 2024 Subaru Crosstrek. The Crosstrek to me sort of serves as the poster child for Subaru, as it checks all of the boxes for most of Subaru's buyers. That includes things like an affordable starting price of just over $25,000 for the base model. You get space and storage in the form of a compact SUV, and you even get ground clearance for people that live in snowy or want to take their Subaru off-road. This can do that. But on top of all of that, it has Subaru's infamous symmetrical all-wheel drive system. Now, this particular vehicle we'll be looking at today is a limited model, which is the luxury Crosstrek, so to speak, and this one as equipped comes just under $35,000. And so in this video, we'll be going through the exterior, the interior, the powertrain, and of course, we'll take it for a drive. So moving on to the exterior of the new Crosstrek, well, it looks a lot like the previous generations of Crosstreks, but that's not a bad thing. Sure, it has new, sharper styling, which I personally prefer over the previous generations, but the Crosstrek has always been a vehicle that is exactly what it looks like. You can see it sits a bit taller, as we actually have 8.7 inches of ground clearance here on all of the models except the Wilderness, which gets an extra ½ inch. So if you really need that clearance, you'll have to look to the most expensive model, but I think it looks just fine here, even on the Limited. Now, the body cladding on the side here helps protect the paint from things like rock chips. So if you want to take your Subaru camping and take it off-road and make sure you use that ground clearance and that all-wheel drive, you can absolutely do that, and Subaru would be happy to encourage you to do that. Now, this particular car happens to be finished in crystal white pearl, and it also features some modern regular driving amenities that you would want even if you're not taking it off-road. For example, we do have LED lighting, including some new steering lighting, so the headlights essentially follow your steering as you move down the road. One of the other things that varies based on what trim level you decide to choose is you start with smaller 17-inch wheels and you work your way up to 18-inch wheels like you have here on the Limited, and this of course is going to be more of a luxurious wheel option that you'll find on the various vehicles. On top of that, every wheel is going to be powered, as this has symmetrical all-wheel drive, which is a fantastic thing. And I should also mention that this vehicle is rated for a 1,500-pound towing capacity, with the Wilderness actually being rated for 3,500 pounds, which is fairly impressive from a fairly small compact SUV. You don't see that very often. As we move through, we also have four-wheel disc brakes, we have keyless entry, we have roof racks, and fairly sharp styling. Obviously, even the mirrors are a slightly different color, which are power adjustable. And then, of course, coming back to the rear, we have a paint-matched spoiler, and we have our hatchback, which serves to access our 19.9 cubic feet of space in the rear. It's a fairly simple-looking vehicle, but I think that's part of the magic. So moving on to the powertrains of the new Subaru Crosstrek, well, there's actually two different engine options, and it depends on which trim level you buy. The lower two trim levels will come with a lower horsepower 2-liter boxer 4-cylinder, whereas the mid-tier sport trim and up, which includes this Limited, come with a larger naturally aspirated 2.5-liter boxer 4-cylinder, good for 182 horsepower and 175 pound-feet of torque. Now, all Crosstreks will also come with a CVT automatic transmission that includes symmetrical all-wheel drive, so that'll be standard no matter which engine you go with. But the bigger engines get some extra features, such as the fact that it has the 8-speed shift on the inside, which is a little bit awkward because a CVT transmission doesn't actually have gears, yet it's in there nonetheless with paddle shifters on the wheel if you want to use it. On top of that, some of the coolest features are the off-road features, which includes things like hill start assist, you get hill descent control, which is a pretty cool feature, and then you even have Subaru's X mode. And the X mode is a really interesting one. It's a computer-controlled feature where the car will actually adjust the engine, transmission, and Subaru all-wheel drive, doing some extra torque vectoring and things to help you get out of sticky situations, things like deep snow or deep mud, in which most cars would get stuck. Your Subaru Crosstrek has special drive modes to help get you out of it. Now, on top of that, it's performance-wise, it's not really a race car. This car weighs around 3,400 pounds, which doesn't make it the heaviest car in the world, which is great because it's compact. But the 0 to 60 time for the big motor cars will be 0 to 60 in about 8.1 seconds and has a quarter-mile time of 16.3 seconds. Now, those performance figures aren't great, but it's not really a performance car, so what do you expect? But the smaller models, the smaller engine models, are considerably worse, I would say. For that reason, I definitely recommend the big motor models over the other other smaller models. So moving on to fuel economy, may not be the main reason you're interested in the all-wheel drive Subaru Crosstrek, but let's discuss it nonetheless. I should say and lead this by the lower 2-liter actually getting better fuel economy than the bigger 2.5-liter, but it's still really good. The base rating from the EPA is 26 miles per gallon city and 33 miles per gallon highway, with an average rating of 29 miles per gallon. And given that the Crosstrek has a 16.6 gallon fuel tank, means that your average tank should be about 480 miles of regular mixed driving. But if you take it on a road trip, let's say, and do a lot of highway driving, you've now increased your range to well over 500 miles, which is absolutely phenomenal. So you're also going to get decent gas mileage while driving in your adventure-ready Subaru Crosstrek. So moving on to the interior of the Subaru Crosstrek, well, the initial impressions are good. We do have a mostly plastic interior, but they made the touch points out of leather. So the steering wheel is actually wrapped in leather. Our shifter is leather, and even the seats are trimmed partially in leather, with also having that Subaru sort of anti-spill resistant material in it as well. A lot of this plastic, we even have this pseudo carbon fiber trim on here as well, which will vary based on what trim level you get. The overall seating and feel of the interior is pretty good. It feels fairly spacious and open, including the fact that me, coming in about 6 foot even, can actually sit in the back seat with the driver's seat set up for me, having headroom and having my knees not actually touch the back of the seat. So the overall seating impressions are really good. Being able to put adults in the back is fantastic, and you still have your hatchback space. Now on top of that, you can get things like this moonroof, which will help open it up and feel a bit more spacious if you need to, but it's not really a priority. Now let's talk technology and interacting with the interior. First off, we have this big center console display. Now this is also found in things like the Subaru Impreza, so it's not specific to the Crosstrek. It does feature Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which should be standard these days, and it features Subaru Starlink system and stuff like that, but it has an absolutely atrocious map system that I would not recommend ever using. Now, I would have liked to see more buttons in terms of what you can press and interact with on the car, but in this case they opted to put a lot of it in the touchscreen. Now some stuff like your climate controls are available easily here at the bottom, and you can easily manage, and you do have dual zone climate control here in the front, and at the top you get this other menu. And one of the things that's really funky about it is it doesn't actually cycle through. A lot of vehicles you can just cycle through and you keep pressing the button, you can go around to the beginning. It still won't let you do that for whatever reason. When you get to the far right, you now have to go back to the left area to press back the other way. But this is how you'll interact with things like your X mode, which will bring up your deep snow, mud, or your snow and dirt, and will show you the respective drive mode on the multi-informational screen in front of you. So that's a quick note on this, which of course can be paired with various speaker systems as well, depending on your trim level, but the one I prefer is the Harman Kardon system. Now that is optional and it does cost more money, but if you're going to be spending a lot of time in this car, maybe you drive a lot, maybe you road trip a lot, I would say it's worth it to go ahead and upgrade to that system, because it does sound phenomenal over some of these standard offerings. In front of the driver, you have 2 analog gauges, which are very simple for your speedo, your tach, and of course you have your fuel gauge and your temperature gauge, but you also have a multi-informational display between those two, which you can adjust to show either your range, your gas mileage, whatever. You can adjust that to your liking, and as I mentioned earlier, will also show some of your various drive modes in front of you as well. The overall steering wheel has a good amount of buttons that makes everything fairly easy to reach, including your controls for your Sport SI system that Subaru likes to use, which can change the way the vehicle handles by more linearly for a consistent feel, or change it to be a bit more dramatic. You have a Qi wireless chargers. I do appreciate the fact that Subaru has several different charging points in here. They didn't commit to just one or the other like some manufacturers. So if you have both older cords and newer cords, you can plug both in here no problem, which I think is a great quality of life feature. This particular car does have heated and powered seats because it is the limited, more luxurious model. The cup holders I really don't like. I would have expected there to be some sort of adjustability in them to be able to hold various cups, but that's not the case here. It's actually really frustrating because smaller things like cans will slosh around and spill, and if you have just the right size cup, then it won't move. So that's a frustrating thing to have in there, but whatever, I get it. Maybe it's not a big priority because here in the US, we are probably one of the only nations that focuses on cup holders. But all in all, it's a pretty usable, functional interior if you can look past some of the technical shortcomings that specifically have to do with this touchscreen, but I like the way it feels, and I would definitely see myself using this car as a regular A to B transport car, or even being simple for just taking off-road.
So what's it like to drive the Crosstrek? Well, it's not overly remarkable as a driver's car. If anything, I'd say it leaves a lot to be desired. Now, from a car perspective, I think it's just fine as a car. I mean, you have a CVT transmission, so if you're not familiar with that, there will be a bit of rubber banding or kind of what I would describe as lag when it comes to touching the gas pedal. So you'll touch the gas and sometimes it feels like you're kind of, waiting on the car a little bit, and that's just one of the characteristics of a CVT transmission. The driving is okay, but it's actually really easy if nothing else. You have high up visibility because it's a little bit taller, which also means it'll have an easy time with speed bumps, which makes it a pleasure to drive. The automatic transmission means there's not much to it in terms of the overall effort, even though it does have the paddle shifters, but to me that's not really worth covering because it's not good. The overall usage of the car is fine. You have all-wheel drive and ground clearance with an up-high seating position. That's the very basics of the car. It's going to do what you ask it to do, and it's going to have no problem getting you to your destination. The Crosstrek is one of those vehicles that just has a overall pleasurable driving experience that is never going to be the limitations of whatever you're using it for. You could take this camping if you wanted, off down various light trails and stuff like that. Not obviously rock climbing, but it'll cover all of that. You'll have no problem getting reasonable gas mileage taking this on a road trip or just using it as a commuter car. And that's what it's great at. It's just being a really do-it-all type of everyman's car, and that's what makes the Crosstrek so great. A lot of the safety characteristics that Subaru has, such as putting some of the blind spot monitors on the inside of the mirrors, makes you feel more confident as a driver because it's easier to see what's going on around you. Not to mention, again, just the general visibility of the car is great, mixed with the higher up appearance. So it's just a great, easy-to-use car as far as you don't mind using things like the maps that come installed in the car. Those have been very frustrating to mess with. I much prefer using the CarPlay and Android Auto that's on it for the overall use. But that's a brief look at what it's like to drive the Subaru Crosstrek.
So in conclusion, the new Subaru Crosstrek embodies the Subaru spirit. It's a do-everything, go-anywhere vehicle. It's a compact SUV with all-wheel drive and ground clearance, so it's fantastic. But the question becomes then, which one do you buy? Well, personally, I like the bigger engine models, which starts with the sport trim right in the middle there, which has a starting price of $29,000, but it gets you the bigger 2.5-liter engine over the lower 2-liter models. Reasons for that is the bigger horsepower is going to make it easier to carry more people. You'll be able to go into more mountainous areas with more cargo in the vehicle, and plainly, I just like to have more horsepower in hand to be able to accelerate faster, which I think can get you out of certain emergency situations on the road and for defensive driving, but it's just personal preference as well. Now, that being said, I don't think that the smaller 2-liter engine models are bad, but I think they might be best suited as a commuter. So if you're solely going to drive the vehicle in maybe a snowy area and you're not planning on taking it off-road into certain rugged environments or drive it up a lot of mountains, then the 2-liter model is just fine. In fact, it's actually slightly better for fuel economy than the 2.5-liter. So in that case, you'll still get the all-wheel drive, you'll get the basic features, but you won't get a lot of the extra goodies, including some of the better off-road features that come with the bigger engine models. So really that's what I think it comes down to. Are you going to use it as a commuter, or are you going to use it as your adventure mobile? And that, I think, is going to determine which trim levels really you decide to go with. Now with that, that's going to be the end of the video. Let me know, have you purchased one? Are you planning on purchasing one? Let me know down below what you think about the 2024 third generation of the Subaru Crosstrek. If you enjoyed the video, could hit that like button for me. I'd really appreciate it. And consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.